Hello, Algebra 1. We're going to go over our 9.4b samples for March 26th, getting ready for our 9.4b quiz. Sample 1. We're going to solve x plus 2 quantities squared equals 21. Our first step will be to undo that square. Since we already have the squared term all by itself, we're going to take the square root as the first step to undo that square. So here we are taking the square to both sides. Of course, we're getting a positive and a negative root on that right-hand side for the square root of 21. That's going to result in x plus 2 equals positive or negative root 21. Now we have the x available so that we can undo that plus 2. Before we couldn't undo that plus 2, it was tied up in the square, but now it's available to undo, so we'll subtract 2 on both sides. That'll give us x is equal to negative 2 plus or minus root 21. Our next step then will be to pull out our calculator and to find out what the square root of 21 is to the nearest hundredth, and that will be 4.58. So we've simply rewritten the equation, replacing the square root of 21 with 4.58. Then we're going to break this information apart into two separate pieces. So x is equal to negative 2 plus 4.58. That's this top part here, negative 2 plus 4.58. The other answer will come from negative 2 minus 4.58, and we've written that separately here. And then we can use our calculators if we would like to work out negative 2 plus 4.58. That'll give us 2.58. And negative 2 minus 4.58, which will give us negative 6.58. You don't have to use a calculator here. They're actually fairly easy to do without a calculator, but it wouldn't be wrong to use a calculator to work out these two addition and subtraction problems. So that concludes sample 1. Sample 2. This will be a lot like sample 1. The first step will be the only thing that's different than sample 1. First step is to get the squared term by itself, so we're going to undo that 4 as a first step. We're going to divide both sides by 4 so that it will cancel out. That will give us x minus 7 squared equals 14. I've worked out what 56 divided by 4 is over here on the right to get my 14. Then I take the square root of both sides, and the square root of both sides then is going to result in x minus 7, and over here, of course, I get my positive and my negative root that is attached to my square root of 14. My next step will be to add 7 to both sides of my equation, and that will give me x equals 7 plus or minus root 14. And then I'm going to use my calculator to find out what the square root of 14 is to 2 decimal places to the nearest hundredth, and here it is, 3.74. So x is equal to 7 plus or minus 3.74. I'm going to break this apart into two separate expressions so that I can find out the value of each. I'm going to break it apart into 7 plus 3.74. Here it is. And then 7 minus 3.74. Here it is. And then my final answer using my calculator, if I'd like, is 10.74. That's the result of 7 plus 3.74. And then 7 minus 3.74 gives us 3.26. And that concludes our samples then for this lesson 9.4b. It's time for you to make sure that you have this recorded on your lesson work, and then go ahead and take the quiz as a next step. All right, we'll see you next time.